Thanks a Lot Universe by Chad Lucas, Chapter 33, Here, Now, Brian. Voices in the kitchen woke me on Saturday morning. I was in my parents' room, sprawled on Mom's side of the bed. Sun streamed in through the window. I focused on the kitchen, trying to sort out the voices. Oof. Hey, Richie, I missed you, buddy. And I missed you too, beautiful. Come here. Laughter. Everett, stop that. Where's Brian? Mom, that was Mom's voice. My whole family is here. How? I hopped out of bed and started down the hall. They stood in a huddle, Dad with one arm around Mom and the other holding up Richie, who was hanging off his neck. Sunlight filled the kitchen. Maybe I was still dreaming, or the world had ended and this was the afterlife. All forgiven and forgotten, all our failures erased. Mom opened her arms and I went to her. No ice mode this time. It was morning in my own kitchen and Dad squeezed us, with Richie squashed in the middle, his back pressed against my ear. Nobody moved for a long time. When we finally pulled apart, I noticed Hank in the doorway. He must have picked up Mom and Richie. How is this possible, I said. I'm out for the day, Mom said. I've been out more this week, going for walks, readjusting to life outside. She stroked my hair. Getting ready to come home. So we all get to come home now, Richie said. Mom and Dad looked at each other. Just for today, Rich, Dad said. You guys can come home for good soon. I have to go away for a while. Richie's eyes fell. Are you going to jail? Yeah. Quiet. Dad reached for Richie's shoulder. Richie resisted at first, but eventually he let Dad pull him in. We don't need to think about that now, Dad said. We're going to the beach. I'd never been so happy to spend 45 minutes in the car with my family. Dad drove us to Bayswater, and we talked about normal things like normal people. Mom said she'd heard a wild rumor that I'd gone to a party. I grinned. My phone buzzed. A text from Ezra. Everything good? Yeah, we're going to the beach, I wrote back. Cool, where? Bayswater. Sweet, see you later. Mom glanced in the mirror. Are you texting? Seriously? We're together for the first time in weeks, and you're talking to someone else on your phone? This is why I hate those things. Relax, Julia, Dad said. He's old enough to have a phone. Besides, you should be happy for me, I said. I finally have a social life. Dad chuckled. Mom rolled her eyes. Do I get a phone for my birthday, Richie asked. I have more friends than Brian does. Wow, Rich, that's cold. I poked his leg. He batted my hand away. Mom turned. You are absolutely not getting a phone for your 10th birthday. She raised a hand to cut off his protest. Save your breath, kiddo. The All My Friends card is no good here. Richie huffed and crossed his arms. Dad and I grinned. Mom was back in full mom mode, and I didn't mind at all. We all loved the beach. Something about the rhythm of the ocean made it easier to stop thinking. The tide went in and out. Some days the surf swelled higher than others. Sometimes the shore was blanketed in fog, but the ocean was always the ocean. I relaxed with warm sand between my toes and the steady tumble of waves in my ears. The day was perfect, warm and sunny. It was the first official weekend of summer, but too early for swimming in the cold Atlantic, so the beach wasn't crowded. I let Mom rub sunscreen onto my shoulders. I couldn't entirely shake the thought we might not have another day like this for a long time, but I didn't dwell on it. We were here now. Time to go in, Dad declared. The day men had a rule about dunking ourselves no matter what. Dad, Richie, and I lined up on the shore, counted to 3, and ran. We screamed as the freezing ocean shocked us. We dove in, letting the cold sting our entire bodies. Then we surfaced and screamed again. Dad and Richie played in the waves, but shivers racked my skinny limbs and I had to retreat. I stretched on my belly on our beach blanket. Mom covered my back with a towel. I closed my eyes and listened to Richie shouting, Mom, watch this! Mom! Over the rhythm of the waves. After I was warm and dry, I walked along the shore with Mom. We talked about school, Ezra, the Clellans. The incident didn't hang over every sentence. Mom said there was no point pretending it never happened, but it didn't have to define the rest of our lives. I started an art therapy group this week, she said. It's less painful than the usual sit in a circle and talk about your feelings deal. I think it'll help. That's good, Mom. I took 4 steps. You'll keep doing other stuff too, right, after you're home? Mom gave me the side eye, but she answered. I'll have my regular appointments with my psychiatrist. We've adjusted my medication. She rubbed her arms as the breeze stirred off the water. We'll have check-ins with the social worker for a while. Make sure we're, Yeah, 5 more steps. Kate made an appointment for me too, at the Children's Hospital on Thursday with a psychologist. Mom slowed for a half step. How do you feel about that? I don't know. She made me take this test. I kept my eyes on the waves rolling over my toes. You know I get anxious, but it's way worse lately. Like, sometimes it's awful, and sometimes I stop feeling anything at all. Like when I hit Victor, I wasn't even mad, I just did it. That's weird, right? You've been through a major trauma, Brian. People react to stress in different ways. Mom's voice went flat like she was reciting from a textbook. How old were you when you first thought something was not right? She fell quiet so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she exhaled. I was a little older than you, just starting high school. She reached for my hand. We'll talk more once I'm home, okay? You can ask whatever you want. It'll be good for you to talk to a professional too. But I want you to know I'm so proud of you. If we need to get you some help, that doesn't make you weaker or less than anyone else. Gabe gave me that pep talk too. Mom smiled. Jackie said you and Richie have been good for Gabe. It was weird to hear Mom use Mrs. Cullen's first name. Gabe's helped me a lot. I don't think I've done anything for him. Don't be so sure, honey. It often goes both ways. Mom held my hand as we walked. I felt self-conscious holding her hands with her on the beach, but she was happy, so I didn't want to let go. Later, Dad and I sat on the boulders at the far end of the beach. He rattled off a list of things to do around the house. Mow the lawn every couple of weeks. You remember how to start the mower, right? I said absently. And help your mom with groceries. You know she finds stores overwhelming sometimes. Hank will help with bills, but check the mail. Dad trailed off. He chuckled. I'm doing it again. I turned. What? Lecturing you. I'll stop now. He rested his hand on the base of my neck. You're a good kid, Bea. You know, the way you and your mom get along, I never had that. I know it's been rough, but she loves you more than anything. Always has and always will. I leaned my head on Dad's shoulder. The drive home was quiet. Richie's yawns grew bigger as we wound along the coast of the Espetikon Peninsula. I slid into the middle seat so he could rest against me. By the time we reached the highway, he was asleep with his face buried in my t-shirt. I closed my eyes. What are you thinking about? Mom asked. I kept my eyes closed. Nothing. I doubt that. Okay, everything. Did you have a good time? It was perfect. So why did my voice crack and my eyes swell up? Mom and Dad knew. They didn't need to ask. We could keep going, Dad said wistfully. The four of us, see where we end up? Mom touched his arm. You know none of us are enough for each other. Dad sighed. I know. The kitchen smelled delicious when we got home. I recognized that aroma. Hot, numbing chicken from the Hungry Chili. Hank was unpacking takeout containers. My stomach growled as we dug in. I loved the feeling of fire in my stomach, the way it made my head go tingly. Dad and I egged each other on and teased Hank, who stuck to the mildest dishes. Richie guzzled root beer and let out a massive burp. Mom burped louder and Richie collapsed in laughter. Mom and Dad slipped into the kitchen and talked in whispers. Then suddenly they were singing. Happy birthday to you. Dad set an ice cream cake in front of me, lit up with 13 candles. I blinked back happy tears. Happy birthday, sweetie, Mom said softly. I'm sorry we messed up so badly the first time around. We love you. I had to swallow hard before I could draw a breath deep enough to blow out my candles. My wish was optimistic, but hopefully not impossible. I wish that next year, on my actual 14th birthday, we could all do this together. After cake, Mom and Dad retreated to the deck. I watched through the glass door as Dad wrapped Mom in his arms. This was their goodbye. Dad hunched over the railing with his back to the house as Mom came inside, wiping her eyes. I'll see you on Monday, she told Richie and me. We'll come home together. Enjoy tonight with your father. As Mom stepped outside, Hank turned to me. I'll be around to help. Sorry I couldn't do more before. But now that you're Dad... He scratched his neck. Once you're all home, it's different. You need anything, day or night, you call me. You guys are like family. Hank patted my shoulder and followed Mom out the door. I turned to the living room as Dad stepped inside from the deck. His smile was too wide, like he was afraid to stop. All right, boys, last night together for a while. Let's make it count. Our night was epic. Video game battles and wrestling matches, and Richie laughing so hard he almost threw up. Eventually, Dad carried Richie to bed, tucked surfboard style under his arm. He stayed in Richie's room a long time. When he came out, he sat on the couch next to me. So, B-Man, we need to have one more talk. You're a teenager now. Some conversations are only meant for a guy and his dad, especially conversations about your body. 30 seconds in, my ears were hot enough to pop popcorn, but it wasn't as horrible as I expected. Dad didn't lecture me, he told jokes and made me laugh. I fumbled through a few questions. I even fought past the tingling in my cheeks and told him what Ezra told me. Dad asked what I knew he'd ask. Do you feel the same way about him? This conversation would have been easier with Mom. It would have been a month ago anyway, but as Dad leaned on one elbow waiting, I didn't tense up like I used to. I don't know. Being with Ezra makes me happy. I like that he likes me, but I'm not sure if it's more. I guess I don't know who I like yet. Is that normal? Dad stretched. Know what, B-Man? You've heard enough advice from me. You'll figure it out when you're ready to figure it out. And whatever you decide is okay with me. That wasn't one of Dad's usual answers. He smiled and it made me feel lighter. Dad wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but he was trying in all the ways he knew how. We were beginning to understand each other just as he was leaving me. He patted my knee. We should get you to bed. I'm going to sleep in my room. You sure? I wasn't sure at all, but I would be home for good in 2 nights, and I couldn't crawl in with bed with Mom every night. I can do this, I told myself. It's only night. I prepared for a struggle, but as I lay in bed, with my face still warm from a day full of sun and my family's laughter echoing in my ears, only the good moments came back as I fell asleep. In the morning, Hank returned with Dad's lawyer, a man named Jason Beals. Mr. Beals explained that once Dad turned himself in, the police would probably hold him until his first court appearance early in the week. Dad would plead guilty. They were trying to fast-track the process rather than drag it out. Dad said Mr. Beals would drive him to the police station while Hank took Richie and me back to the Clellans. No way, I said. I'm going with you. Dad's forehead scrunched. Brian, I'm not letting you go alone. The adults fell quiet. Okay, Dad said, if you insist. I thought Richie might insist too, but he didn't. He stared at the kitchen table in his rarest state, silent. Dad ruffled his hair. Richie buried his face in his arms and burst into tears. I couldn't watch. I was already teetering on the edge. I waited on the front step until Dad and Mr. Beals emerged from the house. We drove down Goddington Street in silence. My heart raced as we climbed the steps of the police station. I couldn't panic, not now. I reached for Dad's hand. He glanced at me in surprise, but he didn't say anything. He held on. Sergeant States was waiting in the brick-lined foyer with a young-looking officer in uniform. Mr. Day, he said, nice to meet you in person. Wish I could say the same, Dad joked weakly. He turned to me. I got it from here, B-Man. This is where we say goodbye for now. I hugged him tight. I love you, Dad. He squeezed me back. I love you too, Brian. This was all I wanted, for Sergeant States to see my dad was more than his mistakes. Sergeant States told the other officer to take Dad inside. He turned to me. Where do you need to go? Can I give you a ride someplace? Dad stared at us. I nodded. Dad hesitated, but he nodded back. I waved to him one last time and bit my lip as I walked out of the police station. I tried not to think about when and where I might see him next. Am I taking you to the Clellans? Sergeant States asked after I climbed into his car. Yeah, Gabe told me you kind of convinced Mrs. Clellan to take us in, so thank you. I appreciate it. Didn't take much convincing, he smiled. I'm just glad I don't have to keep chasing you all over town. I managed a tiny grin back. I didn't say anything else until we pulled into the Clellan's driveway. Thank you for the ride. Remember, my dad's not a lost cause. I need him back. He stuck his hand out. I don't believe in lost causes. Take care, Brian. I shook his hand. Mrs. Clellan told me Hank had taken Richie out for breakfast, and Gabe was with his friends. She made us tea, and we sat at the table. I stirred a spoonful of honey into my tea and watched the brown liquid swirl in the mug. I have a favor to ask, I said, if you're not busy, on Thursday after school. Your appointment? I nodded without looking up. Mom doesn't drive, and I don't want Kate to take me. I could take the bus. I'd be happy to take you, Brian. Thanks. I'm nervous, I admitted. It turns out I don't like hospitals. Mrs. Clellan smiled, though she looked sad. I'm not sure anyone likes hospitals. She sipped her tea. Before I forget, I have something for you. She slipped down the hall and returned with a stack of books. Don't worry, these aren't homework, I promise. Lena asked me to ship her some things, and as I was going through, I found some books she loved at your age. I thought you might enjoy them. I looked through the pile. I'd already read 2 of the 5, but the others looked interesting. Thanks, I'll get them back to you. No rush. You can always drop them by over the summer. She paused. I hope you'll visit sometimes. I'm going to miss having you here. I blinked. I'm going to miss it here too. Mrs. Clellan patted my hand. My throat was too heavy to say anything else. I flipped through one of the books as we sat at the table drinking tea together, and it was enough. Chapter 34, The Hardest Part, Ezra. If there was ever a weekend I needed to be around friends and stay out of my own head, this was it. But Ty had a tournament, Kevin had relatives visiting, and I couldn't even call Nat because she was at a conference on how to organize and save the world. She would have been tight with Miss Firth. I was almost desperate enough to join Dad at a charity golf tournament, except golf took 4 hours. Nothing as dull as golf should take 4 hours. I kept worrying Brian would rethink Friday night and decide it was too awkward to stay friends. But I couldn't bother him with questions like, "You don't hate me, right?" He had enough to deal with. I started and deleted a dozen texts to Colby. Finally, I sent this. "Can we talk? Soon? It's important." Then I did whatever I could to distract myself. I played guitar. I binge-watched a high school mystery series where the plot was ridiculous, but the sidekick guy was cute. Colby never replied. On Sunday morning, I waited till a reasonable hour and walked to his house. If our friendship was over, we were going to end it face to face. My fingers hammered a riff on my thigh as I rang the doorbell. I was halfway into chickening out when the door opened. Mrs. Newcomb's eyes lit up. "Ezra, it's been ages." Her smile tightened into a grimace. "I think Colby's still asleep. I haven't heard a peep from those boys yet." "That's okay, Mrs. Newcomb. I'll make it quick. It's important." I slipped inside before I could back out of this half-cooked idea. She gave me a bewildered look, but she didn't stop me. Colby's mom was an interior designer, so their house always looked catalog perfect. Colby's room was the exception. I knocked once and opened the door to familiar chaos. Clothes everywhere, skateboard against a wall, Skittles wrappers and energy drink cans scattered on the dresser. He thought the mess helped keep his mom out. Colby grunted and stretched. His covers slipped past his bare shoulders. I remembered how cute he was when he first woke up, moving in slow motion with his voice all raspy and his hair a wild thicket of sunshine. It's cruel how feelings you don't want can come rushing back at the worst possible time. He rubbed his eyes. "Ezra, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk." I trailed off as a pile on the floor shifted, a head poked out from a sleeping bag. When Colby's mom said "those boys," I assumed she was including Jackson down the hall. Nope, she meant Victor. He yawned and staggered to his feet. "I guess that's my cue to go pee." I looked away as he brushed past. He wasn't wearing a shirt either. If this was a terrible time to have certain feelings for Colby, it was a worse time to discover Victor had perfect abs. He was comfortable enough in Colby's house to walk around shirtless. I guess he'd slept over more than I had lately. 2 steps down the hall, he looked back and nodded at me. "Nice job DJing at Ty's. You're pretty talented when it comes to music." Then he disappeared into the bathroom. Did Victor just compliment me? He seemed sincere. I had no idea how to figure him out. "What is your deal, bro?" Colby's wide awake and annoyed tone brought me back to earth. He'd sat up in bed, blankets bunched around his waist. "My deal is you're avoiding me," I said, "and you're acting like an..." "We were out. My phone died." He cut me off without a hint of apology. I started to respond, but he kept going. "Jackson's at Victor's house. You know how much Jackson sucks, right? Victor's brothers are worse. Together they're like evil Voltron. So Victor stays over here." His eyes narrowed. "Are you happy now?" "That's it?" I said. "You and Victor hang out to avoid your brothers?" Colby hesitated. He smoothed his bad head. "He saved me from flunking math and science," he mumbled. I frowned. "You said Gemma helped you." "Well, yeah, but I could only focus so much with Gemma. Victor actually helped me." Colby stared at me. "Victor's smart. He's a good tutor and a good friend. He never makes me feel dumb or like I'm a bad person because I'm not perfect or whatever." His expression lodged like a dart in my stomach. "Wait, what? What's that supposed to mean?" Colby folded his arms. "You and Ty and Kevin are good at everything and super nice, and you judge me sometimes. It's annoying." My body flushed with heat. "I don't judge you, Colby. I just wish you wouldn't..." I sighed. "When you make fun of Brian or make jokes about my skin color..." "Oh, come on," he interrupted. "You know I'm only teasing, right? But that's not how it feels to me, especially..." I took a deep breath, straightened my glasses, and jumped right to the hardest part. "Your jokes about things being gay hurt the most because I am gay, and I've been afraid to tell you." Colby's eyes widened. I swallowed and kept going. "I have a crush on Brian. I don't think he feels the same way, but this is who I am, Colby. I came here to tell you the truth, and I hope you can be cool with that. And if you'd rather hang around Gemma and Victor, that's fine, honestly. I just don't want things to be weird and tense anymore. It sucks. Ugh, wrap it up before the tears start. Anyway, I'll stop bugging you now. Text me whenever if you want. You know how to find me. I turned to race out of there before I fell apart, but Victor was in the doorway. He had heard everything. Great, perfect, awesome. I put my head down and tried to leave. He stood in my way. I won't say anything. I looked up. What? Victor leaned against the doorframe. That look you gave me. You're afraid I'll tell people or make fun of you or whatever, but I won't. I'd never been so close to Victor. Even from 2 feet away, he was difficult to read, and I suspected he liked it that way. But I couldn't sense any mocking in his eyes, nothing to make me doubt he was serious. Colby cleared his throat. Same, obviously. I won't say anything, bro. And, be yourself. He coughed. Not like you can help it, right? I bit back a sigh. That was a long way from Kevin and Ty making up code words to help me talk about boys. But at least it wasn't get lost forever creep. Except he had pulled his blanket up to his armpits. Colby went shirtless all the time, swimming, sleepovers, the skate park, wherever. He wasn't the least bit shy, even around girls, but suddenly he was modest now that he knew I was gay. Right, I whispered as my throat locked up. See you at school. I made it home before I started to cry. I felt better afterward, like the messy end of a stomach bug when all the grossness is finally purged. I was losing something with Colby, and it would sting for a while, but I'd gain something else. I didn't have to be so cautious around my friends anymore. I didn't have to hide. I was so drained that I fell asleep. I woke at noon to a text thread from Kevin. Perry Molecular in grade 8 French immersion has a rainbow pin on his backpack. Definite mango potential. Molly knew. Ha, autocorrect. But Perry Molecular would be a wicked superhero name. If you're into older guys. Older French guys. Bet he'd help you learn French, lol. I'll run some intel on him, find out if he's cool. I'll be screening all potential mangoes, by the way. Not letting you date any skis balls. I wrote him back. Slow your roll, Kay, but I'm glad you're so into this. I really am, lol. My chances with girls improve if you're using your dreamy rock star hotness on boys. You're the best, Kev. Kevin and Ty were my people. I knew that now. They had stepped up when I showed them who I really was. But I needed other people too. So I sent another text to Brittany. Hey, maybe this is weird, but do you have a minute to give advice to a 7th grader? She replied in 30 seconds. You noticed I live to boss boys around, right? What's up? I came out to my friends this weekend. Brittany didn't text back. She called. How'd it go? Are you all right? Yeah, sort of. Just sort of? She paused. My family's at the movies and Gabe's off sportsing. I have a feeling you'd make the perfect kitchen partner for homemade pizza, loud music, and air guitar. I smiled. That sounds perfect.